Hello everyone, it's Tom here from Tech Nexus, and thanks for joining me on my series of doing a project with the Autodesk tools from the AC collections. So we're at the point where we've done our p&id, so you can see I've got three p&ids here. So p&id 1, 2 and 3. Now you might think that you can just go off and start doing the 3D designer things, but until you do a certain thing first, you can't do anything in Plant3D until you've written a spec for it. Now, a piping spec or specification is a document that maybe someone like a process engineer or maybe the client will have, and it will define what specs are used for what pipelines in the project. So this one is all utilizing the out-of-the-box CS150 spec, but yours might be called A1, B1, C1, whatever, for different grades, different types of pipe, different services, all of that kind of thing. Now, it's not going to stop you from doing structure or equipment, so you could set those models out, but before you do any piping, you have to do what's called a spec, which comes from a catalog. Now, Plant3D ships with 3 or 4 different catalogs out of the box, but if you want more of them within the Plant3D software, if you look up at the top right where you log in, there's a little shopping cart icon. That takes you to the App Store. Now, for Plant3D, this is what appears. So we can come in here and look at the admin side of things, calculation, cats and specs, model conversion, p&id tools, whatever. So I'm just going to look at the cats and specs. And if I click on free, and then there are some free ones from other companies, but the Autodesk ones are these blue sort of boxes with a white arrow on it, and you can see there's a metric ASME catalog there. So when you do download the catalog for a different standard, so not out of the box ones, you can then start creating your own specifications from a particular catalog. So if we look at the Victolic catalog here, we can see all the different kind of components that it takes, and then we just click on download, and you might need to install it, but it will appear in your plant library. So if we're looking at our p&ids, so I'm just going to shut this down because we can't go from the piping of a p&id into the 3D side without at least knowing which spec we're going to use, and for which service, for whichever temperature rating, pressure, all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to shut down the p&id because we don't need them just yet. So once we fire up the spec editor, you get presented with this front dialog box. So we can open or create from existing catalog, and we have a list of the recent ones here. So spec can't be created until you have a catalog finalized. So I'm just going to look at, let's look at the standard ASME pipe and fittings catalog. So when that catalog does open, at the top right of your screen, you'll see the catalog editor. So this is where we can review what is in the catalog. We can change the dimensions, we can change the long descriptions, change the port settings, all of the data associated with that item. So if we look at, let's look at some flanges. So something like a weld neck flange with a raised face facing and rated at 150 pound. So let's look at just this half to 24-inch entry in the catalog, so you can see that's what it looks like. I can see what the dimensions mean. Now each of these dimensions, there's D1, D2, D3, the B and the L, are all reflected here under these size parameters, and if you hover your mouse over them, you will see a little tooltip will appear to tell you what it is. So don't be afraid of using the out-of-the-box catalogs because they're in Imperial. So we can switch it from Imperial to metric, so I can see what that 3-inch means and what the values are. So you can come in here and take off the 3 decimal places, put in 1, put in none, change the long descriptions, and put in the weights and all that kind of stuff. So again, a lot of this information is already there. If I wanted to create a new one, I can click on the Create New Component button, and it takes me to the catalog here where I can see the different fittings. So I want fasteners, flanges. So if I want to do new flanges, so whatever the end type is, so I'll just put flanged. So again, I've got lapped flanges, weld neck with instrument connections plus blind flanges. So you can use the 3D parametric graphics. You can use AutoCAD blocks. So there is a link there to take you to a small tutorial on how to do that. Or you can use the catalog builder, which will help you create components, like a lot of them, using Microsoft Excel. So it depends on how good you are with either of those. You can do it with AutoCAD if you're quick to model it up. Things with the AutoCAD, you need to model up every size. You can't just do sort of one tricky item and have the dynamic block function. You need to model each one. So that's a couple of ways of adding more components. We can duplicate it, or I can delete the components. Otherwise, I can see all of the information here. Now this is the catalog. To add it to a spec, I click on the Spec Editor tab at the top right, and then I'm going to open a spec. So I'm just going to give it, I'm just going to open up my one. And then you can see inside that directory, when it does populate, it'll have a list of all of the specs. So again, I can open up the CS150 and I can see what sizes it goes to. So this goes to 1/2 to 24 inch, and I can go through and I can add or remove items in and out of this spec as I see fit, depending on what it is. Okay, and there is a button over here. So for the part use priority, I can click on it and it'll give me, so for a 1 inch, it's going to treat the 90 as a priority over the 45 over the street elbow there. So depending on what it is, so same thing with the gaskets, and then you've got the socklets, the eyelets, the pipe, everything in here. Now, we're not just finished with the spec yet. We need to edit the branch table for it. Without this branch table being edited, the pipe's not going to know what it does when it gets to a branch. So for an 8 by 8 inch connection here, we have a T1 and an S1, which is a butt welded T or a stub-in plain ended. So again, if I go to a 6 by 10 inch, I've got 3 options there for my branch to be populated. So again, there's 2 parts to a spec. It's the spec editor itself and the branch table editor. And once they're done and they're copied into the project directory, then the Plant3D users can start doing their piping, which is something we'll go through towards the end of the week. So for now, hopefully that's been a good explanation of how to use the catalog and spec editor in Plant3D. So tomorrow, once in my virtual project here, once I do have the spec done, then I can do the piping. But tomorrow I'm going to start laying out my structure using the pipe, the grid function, and creating some pipe racks in my project. And then the following day we will place equipment, so we get a better idea on where we want all the equipment to be placed. And then following that, we will start placing the piping. So that's going to take us a couple of videos to do, but we know we have at least 3 or 4 videos coming up on setting up and finishing the setup of this Plant3D project. So thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, click the thumbs up. If you didn't, click the thumbs down. Feel free to subscribe and click on the notify icon to get notified of my daily videos. So thanks for watching.